Diablo 4 offers you a ton of things to do after finishing the main campaign, including special overworld events, more difficult dungeons, and of course new loot to chase after. We'll tell you everything you need to know about the endgame in this video. So after finishing the main story missions and seeing the credits, you will have a new priority quest that leads you back to the Tree of Whispers, which then asks you to help it collect on some debts. You'll have to complete several objectives in an area that count towards your grim favors. The first set will always be in Caldeum, as they are part of the tutorial quest, but after that they can pop up in any region of the map. The locations rotate every hour and a half, and it's also good to note that not every objective rewards the same amount of favors. Quick objectives like events or cellars will reward 1, whereas difficult ones like dungeons give you 5. After you complete enough objectives to earn yourself 10 favors, you can return to the tree to pick from 3 different caches of rewards. A cache will be focused on a specific type of gear, but will always include a variety of crafting materials and gems on top. There are also some special rewards that only drop on World Tier 3 or above, but more on that in a bit. And while it might sound straightforward, there are a couple of intricacies to this system that are good to know. For starters, you don't need to complete all objectives in the same region. So if you want to do an event in one region and then a dungeon in another, you can do that. World bosses and Legion events can also count towards your progress, with them counting for 5 and 3 favors respectively. You can check the marker on the map to see if this is the case. I also found that if you want to be as efficient as possible, you'll want to look for these altars of reaping. These have you collecting 100 motes from fallen enemies and then return them to an altar, after which 3 strong enemies will spawn that you need to kill. It's relatively easy and rewards you with 3 favors, but you can often pair it with another objective in the area to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. There are kill objectives that have you kill a number of specific enemies that will then also drop motes for the altar of reaping, and the same goes for events or the objectives where you need to find a corpse, kill some enemies, and then a mini boss. On a final note, if your last objective happens to give you more favors than you need to reach 10, those will already count towards your next set. So for example, completing a dungeon with 9 favors collected already gives you 4 marks as soon as you collect your reward from the tree. After you've collected some decent gear for your build and have leveled up to about 50, it's time to enter the capstone dungeon and unlock the 3rd world tier. This is where the real endgame starts, as it unlocks 2 amazing new activities that reward you with tons of great loot. But in order to get there, we need to clear a special dungeon in the Cathedral of Light in Kjovashad on World Tier 2. It's a bit lengthier than a normal dungeon, with a boss fight in the middle as well as the end. For the first fight, focus on the Physician first, as they can revive the other enemies, but other than that, there aren't really any special mechanics you need to keep in mind. And while you can of course attempt this dungeon at any level you like, the game recommends you try and transition into World Tier 3 at level 50, which is also when you unlock another great feature that will play a huge part in the way you get stronger as you progress to level 100, the Paragon board. After level 50, you won't gain any more skill points by leveling, but instead gain Paragon points to select nodes on your Paragon board. It actually works a bit different than regular leveling, as for each increment on your XP bar you get a Paragon point. So 1 at 25%, 1 at half, 1 at 75%, and then 1 when you level up. These points can then be spent on your Paragon board to unlock a variety of passive bonuses. Most of these will contribute to your 4 main attributes: strength, intelligence, willpower, and dexterity. If you're unsure about what each of these do, you can check the explanation in your stats menu. There are more powerful magic and rare nodes as well, which can just straight up increase your damage by 10%, or even legendary nodes that can help you take your builds to the next level. I personally can't wait to unlock this Thunderstruck node for my Storm Druid build. I made a build guide for that, for if you want to try it out for yourself. We'll link it in the video description. And by the way, if you enjoyed the video so far, be sure to leave a like and remember to subscribe as well to not miss out on any future Diablo videos. Alright, back to the Paragon board, as next to the preset nodes there are also glyph slots where you can manually slot a glyph of your choosing to handpick which buff that node gives. Glyphs usually have a bonus that scales with a specific type of node that needs to be in range of the glyph, which is listed on its item card. So you need to be a bit strategic about which glyph you place where, and of course which nodes you buy, as you want to empower these glyphs as well. Glyphs can by the way drop from various sources, including the reward caches from the Tree of Whispers. They can also be leveled up, and while they can drop at any world tier, you are required to play on world tier 3 or above to upgrade them. That is because world tier 3 gives you access to Nightmare Dungeons. You'll need sigils to make one, which drop from the reward caches from a world boss and the Tree of Whispers as well. So you need one of these to drop for your first one, which only happens on world tier 3 or above, but sigils can also drop as a reward in a Nightmare Dungeon itself. They will then appear in your consumables tab, and using one will transform the dungeon listed on the sigil into a Nightmare variant. These will always have a couple of extra modifiers that can also be viewed on the sigil, including a limit on the number of revives in the dungeon, but it will always include a boon for you as well. And then it's just a matter of making your way to the dungeon and completing it, after which you'll receive some item drops as a reward, but more importantly, you also get to spend some experience to level up a glyph of your choice. Now, a regular sigil only lets you spend 4 experience after completing a dungeon, and considering that leveling up a glyph once already takes 8 experience, it's not really a time efficient process. But you can actually get higher tier sigils to make Nightmare Dungeons even more challenging, but also increase the rewards and the XP you get at the end. You can get lucky and find these higher tier sigils as a drop, and this is the only way to get them at first. But after finding and completing a tier 3 Nightmare Dungeon, you'll see a new priority quest at the Occultist, which now gives you the ability to craft your own sigils. It uses the resource sigil powder, which you can get by salvaging the Nightmare sigils that drop, but it can also be found in the Tree of Whispers caches. Now, you can't specify the exact type of sigil you want to craft. In fact, the only thing you have some influence over is the tier at which you craft them. You can craft a sigil within a certain range, like tiers 11 to 15 for example, but apart from that, you only know the amount of afflictions your crafted sigil comes with. Everything else, from the dungeon it applies to the buffs and modifiers it will have, is random. Obviously, the higher the tier of sigil you're crafting, the more sigil powder it will cost, and any sigil above tier 20 can only be used on world tier 4 or higher. That one can by the way be unlocked by completing a new capstone dungeon called the Fallen Temple over here on the map, which is scaled to level 70. Next to doing Nightmare Dungeons, you'll also have access to another great source of loot when playing on world tier 3, which are the Hell Tides. These will pop up in random regions of the map, and you can see where they're active thanks to these markers. While a Hell Tide is active, stronger enemies will spawn in the affected region, but each enemy also has a chance to drop a resource known as Aberrant Cinders, which you grab by walking over them. You can see your current amount of cinders in the top right of the screen next to the timer telling you how much longer the Hell Tide will be active for. You can then spend these cinders on various chests that also appear in the Hell Tide area that will usually contain a specific type of item and will very often drop legendaries as well. But you need to be careful, as you will lose half of your current cinders if you die, so you don't want to hold on to them for too long. You can check what chests are available on the map, and although they don't specify the exact type of item, it does tell you the category. So gifts of weapons will be one or two-handed weapons or offhand items, gifts of protection grant a piece of armor, and gifts of jewelry grant amulets and rings. Good to note is that you can only get cinders from enemies in the overworld area, so entering a cellar or dungeon within the Helltide won't reward you with cinders. However, sometimes a Helltide region can contain objectives that reward favors as well, so if these are in the overworld, you can again kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get progress on both. I also found that doing events in these areas can get you a lot of cinders quickly, as these spawn a lot of enemies and will often attract other players to help you out too. And if you're not looking for a particular type of gear from the Helltide chests, it's smarter to open the ones that only cost 75 cinders, as you'll get to open more of them, which gives you a higher chance of earning a legendary aspect you don't have yet. And you do want to spend these cinders on chests eventually, as you will lose them when the Helltide is over. You'll get a warning for this when there's 5 minutes left, so that's the moment you want to find one last chest, collect the required cinders to open it, and then call it a day. So these new activities really grant you some fun and diverse ways to earn new loot, and there is actually some loot that can only be earned on the higher world tiers as well. You can see this in the world tier selection screen, which notes that on world tier 3, sacred and unique items start dropping. Sacred items can come in any rarity, and it basically means that that item has better stats than a regular item of the same type and rarity. So you'll definitely want to fully kit yourself out with sacred gear as soon as possible, but luckily it's not super rare. You'll actually find quite some sacred rare and even legendary drops to do just that. But the second item category listed under world tier 3, unique, is actually super rare. Apart from the guaranteed drop at the end of the campaign, I haven't managed to find a single unique item yet. They are pretty special though, as they have some insane unique perks on them that can only appear on that item, like this unique necromancer sight from Ryan on Reddit that starts chilling enemies when you hit them with darkness skills. Unlike legendary aspects, these effects cannot be extracted and transferred at an occultist, so it's really a centerpiece item that you'll base your build around. I'd imagine these have a higher chance of dropping at World Tier 4, which again is unlocked after completing a second capstone dungeon at level 70. This world tier also introduces ancestral items, which are effectively the same as sacred items but with even better stats. So as you see, there's a lot of gear to grind and a lot of ways to grind it in Diablo's endgame, but there is even more to come. We went over all the announced post-launch plans in our previous video, you can check that one out by clicking on the screen. Subscribe to not miss our future Diablo 4 content and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one, goodbye.